In 2012, 33-year-old Derek Bordeaux went on a destructive drug-induced rage. Bordeaux rammed his car into the side wall of a church. In a frenzy, he jumped out of the vehicle and chased the pastor of the church from the parking lot into the building. Once inside, Bordeaux attacked the pastor and ultimately beat him to death with an electric guitar that he had found. Police arrived and witnessed Bordeaux slamming the guitar against the pastor's lifeless body. They used a stun gun to subdue him. After being put in handcuffs, he was placed in the back of a patrol car. Moments later, he was found unresponsive and pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. Bordeaux's cousin told investigators that Bordeaux believed that someone was trying to kill him, and someone stuck a needle in his arm the week prior. As it turns out, either he himself or someone else had injected him with drugs. Toxicology reports from February 2013 show Bordeaux was high on PCP on the day of the incident. In 2011, a 43-year-old man from São José do Rio Preto, Brazil, almost died from oral sex. His wife wanted to divorce him, but he wouldn't sign the papers. So in a last-ditch effort to get rid of him once and for all, she plotted his assassination attempt. She laced her vagina with some sort of poison and tried to get her husband to perform oral sex on her. He knew something was a little fishy when he smelled something funny coming out of her genitals. Fearing something was wrong, he quickly rushed her to the hospital, where she later confessed to trying to kill him. The doctor who detoxified the woman said there was enough poison inside of her vagina that would have not only killed her husband, but her as well. Needless to say, he signed those divorce papers. 22-year-old Darius Johnson of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, murdered his live-in girlfriend Monica Gooden with an Xbox 360 on Easter Sunday. He waited for Monica to lay down for bed. Once she had fallen asleep, he entered the room and smashed the gaming console on her head repeatedly. He then stabbed her unresponsive body with a knife over 20 times to make sure she was deceased. Police found a trail of blood leading to the body of Monica Gooden. Next to her was a bloody and broken Xbox 360 and 3 knives. Gooden had been stabbed multiple times in the back, chin, neck, and stomach. Johnson said that he had to sacrifice his girlfriend because she had control over his spirit. He had to sacrifice someone under the astrological sign of Taurus to cleanse his soul. Gooden's November birthday does not fall within the Taurus zodiac phase. According to police reports, he stated she would not die and that he fought her like he was fighting a dragon. Ana Trujillo murdered her boyfriend, 59-year-old Alf Stefan Anderson, with a stiletto shoe in the summer of 2013. One evening, while the two were arguing in their Houston home, Ana removed her cobalt blue platform pump with a 5-inch heel and struck Alf over the head with it. Alf was hit with the shoe over 25 times, with 10 holes as deep as 1 to 1.5 inches. In the trial, she claimed that she was forced to murder Mr. Anderson because he was throwing her around the room over furniture and into walls. Her self-defense claim was thrown out. Investigators found no injuries on her body whatsoever, but there were defensive marks on the arms of her victim. A jury would sentence her to life in prison. A close friend of Anna's told reporters that she once said, "If anybody ever screws with me, I'll stab him in the eyes with this," pointing at her stiletto heels. In 2008, Karen Walsh, a 45-year-old pharmacist from Dublin, bludgeoned her 81-year-old neighbor to death with a crucifix on Christmas Day. Walsh's neighbor, Marie Rankin, was using a nebulizer during the attack. Walsh grabbed a crucifix from inside Rankin's home and beat her in the face and torso, killing her almost instantly. After she realized she was dead, she then stripped the victim completely naked. Karen Walsh then sexually molested Mrs. Rankin in order to make it look like actions of a vicious intruder. Mrs. Rankin's dead body was discovered lying naked, bruised, and bloodied on her bedroom floor, with imprints of the crucifix's thorns on her chin. During the trial, the prosecution claimed that Walsh killed Mrs. Rankin in a drunken rage. They alleged that Mrs. Rankin criticized her drinking and urged her to go home to her 2-year-old son. She is now currently serving the minimum sentence of 20 years in prison, before the possibility of parole. Donna Lange, a 50-year-old woman from Everett, Washington, smothered her 51-year-old boyfriend to death with her breasts after an argument. According to reports, the couple had been drinking alcohol and smoking weed all day. It is important to note that Lange's boyfriend was considerably smaller than she was. During an argument, she allegedly tossed her boyfriend around in the back of their motorhome. Neighbors say that the man could be heard yelling at the heftier Lange to get off of him. Lange was later found on top of him, with her chest pressed atop his face. Lange was completely passed out due to the heavy ingestion of intoxicants they had consumed earlier in the day. Medics tried to perform CPR on him, but he was later pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. Autopsy reports show clumps of her hair were clenched in the victim's hands, showing signs of a struggle. In 2010, 16-year-old Daniel Kavarbasic murdered 55-year-old family friend Duane Hurley. The weapon of choice, a pickle jar. During the trial, it came to light that Daniel was being sexually abused by Hurley for a number of years. Daniel claimed that the 55-year-old manipulated him to do sexual favors in exchange for money and to borrow his expensive cars. One night when Daniel asked to borrow Hurley's car to go on a date with his girlfriend, Hurley allegedly said, "You think I'm gonna do all this for nothing?" alluding to a sexual favor. At that moment, Daniel reached his breaking point and hit Hurley over the head with a large 10-pound pickle jar. He then grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed the man 55 times. Prosecutors state that Hurley was struck 3 times with the jar as he lay on his bed, blows that would have been fatal even if he hadn't been stabbed. During the trial, it came to light that Hurley's computer had child pornography downloaded to it, much of it featuring underage boys in graphic sexual positions. Daniel was given 5 years probation and psychiatric help. In the winter of 2008, 55-year-old Murat St. Hilaire was found with a corkscrew sticking out of his temple. Investigators said Mr. St. Hilaire's relatives became concerned when his employer called to say that he had not shown up for work. His body was discovered by his own 11-year-old daughter in his Brooklyn apartment. The young girl ran out of the room screaming, "Daddy's dead! Daddy's dead! Somebody stabbed him!" He was lying face up in his bedroom with a corkscrew stabbed in the side of his head. Since then, no suspects or arrests have been made in the murder. Nobody knew why he had been killed, or what he was doing at the time, or with whom he was doing it with. He was simply killed by an unknown assailant who jabbed a corkscrew into his temple and fled into the night. Ramon Navarro was a famous silent screen actor of the 1920s and 30s. Although he played the role of the Latin lover and lady killer on screen, Ramon was openly gay, once having a public romantic relationship with his publicist. In 1968, he was murdered by 2 brothers, Tom and Paul Ferguson, whom he paid to come to his home for sex. The 2 young men believed that a large sum of money was hidden in the 69-year-old's house, so after one of the men had sex with Ramon, they beat him mercilessly to try to get information about the money's whereabouts. Ramon's body was found the next day, bloody and bruised. His hands had been tied behind his back with brown electrical cord. The weapon that ultimately caused his demise was a sex toy. Reports say that during the beating, a lead dildo was repeatedly shoved down his throat, which caused him to suffocate, gagging on his own blood. 32-year-old Angeles Cadillo Castro was ordered to spend 5 years to life in prison for her 5-year-old daughter's death. She repeatedly hit her with a stainless steel spatula for an hour until the child was no longer responsive. The child was found with multiple lacerations all over her body. The woman tried to hide pieces of the murder weapon in drawers and a trash can, but authorities eventually found them. An autopsy reports that the official cause of death was exsanguination, the severe loss of blood. Prosecutors state that the 5-year-old was repeatedly struck with a metal object, causing her to bleed to death, which is a long, torturous process. Experts in the field of child homicide say that this beating would have lasted anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. She had wounds from her neck to her knees, and other defense wounds on the back of her hands, where she tried to defend herself.